1984. Sunday, January 1st. 1984. 1983 passed away at midnight, just as was predicted by all the smart people on television. 1984 officially took the oath of office as the new year about 1 second later. So far on television the news has been on and on about an old George Orwell book that just happened to be titled 1984. I've been hearing never-ending references to Big Brother and totalitarian government and how the Orwell book directly mirrors or relates to today's society. I think it's being altogether overdone. When they're not repeating the Orwell stuff, they've been showing clips of midnight fireworks celebrations from all over the world, highlights of Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, and lots of 1983 year-end review specials. Oh, and lest we forget the never-ending reports of the splitting of the Ma Bell Telephone Company into lots of tiny independent companies. That's too boring for me to even go into detail about. What do I remember about 1983? Well, that kind of puts me on the spot. My memory may not be so good, even though none of those memories could be more than a year old. Let's see. There was all the fuss about Karen Carpenter of the Carpenters dying of anorexia back in February.
Died of cardiac arrest today in a Downey, California hospital. Karen Carpenter was 32. Paramedics were called in to her parents' home this morning after she collapsed, but she was pronounced dead at the hospital. Ms. Carpenter reportedly had long suffered from anorexia nervosa, in which irrational fear of being overweight leads to compulsive dieting. The Carpenters' fresh sound brought romance to pop music in the 1970s.
Junior Samples from the Hall died too. Return of the Jedi opened in May and that was a huge event for me. I saw it twice.
You believe it yourself, but a year and a half later, sitting with popcorn in a theater.
Watching, yeah.
I've forgotten how funny the movie was.
And we should, and on that note, we really must take a look at this. Is where Luke and Princess Leia are about to chase several of the enemy soldiers through a forest. Watch this. There! Two of them! I see them. Wait, Leia! Hey, wait!
Star Wars for the first time, but Return of the Jedi is a thrilling, occasionally touching, and fully satisfying conclusion to the best comic book of all time. It's fantastic.
It certainly is. And you know, this movie did several things. It lived up to every challenge it faced. Everybody in the world has been waiting for 3 years for this picture. And it gave you new animals, it gave you new technology, it developed the story, and most important of all, it wrapped it up in a way that you really wanted to see it wrapped up. It had everything to say. It had to be made. It wasn't just made because the other two pictures were so fantastically popular. It really had a story to tell, and that's why it works.
ABC News anchorman Frank Reynolds died during the summer.
Frank Reynolds, who had been chief anchor on World News Tonight since 1978, began his broadcast career in 1947 in Hammond, Indiana. In 1965, while anchoring at the ABC affiliate in Chicago, the network beckoned.
And what else? Well, I remember around the beginning of September that the world started to look just a little bit scary. The first day of that month was when news broke that the Soviets had shot down a Korean civilian airliner carrying 200 passengers.
Fellow Americans, I'm coming before you tonight about the Korean airline massacre. The attack by the Soviet Union against 269 innocent men, women, and children aboard an unarmed Korean passenger plane.
The Soviets explained that Korean Flight 007 had veered into Soviet airspace, so a jet fighter intercepted it and shot it down. Tensions ran very high over that. When the Russians start shooting down passenger jets, it makes me wonder just how close we are from an actual nuclear war. Considering the fact that I live within 5 miles of the Pine Bluff Arsenal, and that a Soviet nuke is reportedly pointed right at that juicy target makes me pretty squeamish whenever the Cold War heats up. Then I woke up on the morning of Sunday, October 23rd, and heard that 200 U.S. troops stationed in a barracks in Beirut were killed when a terrorist truck bomb destroyed the building.
In Beirut, Lebanon, all day, there has been the horrible job of moving concrete and looking for bodies in the American embassy, shattered yesterday by a tremendous explosion. Peter Jennings is in Beirut and has been for 2 days.
More tensions rocked the world. One crisis followed another, and the next thing I knew, U.S. troops were invading Grenada.
Now, in these past several days, violence has erupted again in Lebanon and Grenada. In Lebanon, we have some 1,600 Marines, part of a multinational force that's trying to help the people of Lebanon restore order and stability to that troubled land.
It seemed the whole world was on the verge of boiling over. On November 11th, everybody got the absolute daylight scared out of them after watching the made-for-TV nuclear war movie, the day after.
I'm Ted Koppel. We'll examine the issues of nuclear war and peace on a special edition of ABC News Viewpoint. We'll hear from Secretary of State George Shultz and a distinguished panel and our live audience here in Washington on Viewpoint, immediately following the day after.
I remember about 5 years ago when the news program 2020 ran a story about what a nuclear war would be like for an average person when they first heard the warning sirens wailing. It made my blood run cold.
This may be one of the last sounds you'll ever hear.
We interrupt our normal program to cooperate in security and civil defense measures as requested by the United States government. This is a Conelrad radio alert. Normal broadcasting will now be discontinued for an indefinite period. Civil defense information will be broadcast in most areas at 6.
That bothered me for days. Since the day after dramatized the same subject matter in an even more graphic manner, I thought it would be wise for me to skip it. Anyway, the very first day of 1984 is almost over. I got my Atari 2600 back from Terry today, and now my brother-in-law Alan has been here most of the evening playing several new games that he brought over. We've spent a few hours with Riddle of the Sphinx, Turmoil, Cosmic Arc and Q*bert. I've been half watching the making of Superman 3 on TV while trying to figure out Riddle of the Sphinx with Alan's guidance. It is a notoriously difficult game. We are supposed to go shopping tomorrow morning. Kmart and Walmart are supposed to have some more big sales. Yeah, I know that school is looming like a stormy cloud on the horizon. You don't have to remind me. That means I get to see Karen again soon. I'm sort of nervous about it and looking forward to it at the same time. I have no idea what 1984 holds for us. If anything,